All right. Well, I think we'll get running here. First of all, thanks for coming out to the boot camp. I know this is a busy week out of a lot of folks' schedule, so certainly appreciate you coming down and gathering some information for us. In starting here, I just want to let you know. I mean, the premise here is all about information. Making sure that you have enough information to get to whatever level you're going to. If you're upgrading, staying within product, or migrating to x86 or wherever your journey is going, it would be great for us to give you the amount of information that's needed. So, Daria has this. Does this go like this? No. Ah.
Your F11 doesn't work. Okay, never mind.
This is why I should probably learn Windows. I figured I made it this far being a user. So anyway, this slide to me is always very important. By leaking the past and future, we help OpenVMS users protect and realize their full value of the application investment. You may not be able to guess by looking at me on the past. Hopefully we'll have, no, in all essence, I'm delivering this, but I have a lot of very talented people in the teams, really getting really good at this, and I'm very proud that what Daria says in the initial speech that you heard this morning is very true. We have a lot of very talented young people that have given us some new ideas. Very, very important to know that we're here. There's a lot of younger talent coming in, and we really are thriving off of the information we have. There is a microphone. I don't know. Is everybody here? Great.
Let's take here just in case.
No. So for those that don't know, this is my boss, Raphael, and he is very versed with Windows and very happy to focus. So when you're talking about upgrades or migrations, right, there's a level of challenges, and some of them can be really simple, but they're sometimes overlooked, right? Can everything be upgraded or migrated? Sounds really simple, but you really need to look at everything that you're running and see if that is available in the next release that you're going to. So, it sounds simple, but we run into this all the time where people haven't really thought about some widgets that they may have had dragged along from HP, or things that software products that have not existed in ages. And people still run, right? There's no support for them. And it's like, well, what are you doing with that? Well, we need that. That's an integral part of what we do. You don't even have support for it now. But anyway, sometimes it's a good chance to go look at all of it. Should I upgrade? Should I upgrade or migrate everything? Right. So I always look at migrations as kind of a house cleaning exercise. What do I need to take with me? It's like I had all this here. And a lot of times in VMS, it's kind of like the Wheel of Fortune. You install a piece of software and it's like yours to keep forever. I don't think anybody knows the product remove command. So when you look at a system disk from somebody, there's products that were installed from 1998 on some of these old systems I look at, right? Are those things coming forward, right? I'm just saying, should I upgrade or migrate everything? Good time as we look at Daria's message, link in the past to the future, there could be some new things that would take the place of some of this really old stuff that's out there. Good time, again, to start thinking about it. Challenge 3, do I have a proper test environment? How are you going to test this? How are you going to test your 86 environment, right? How are you going to test it, even, as you start nearing production, right? And what is my test environment? A lot of times the test is also development, but you have developers in your company that rely on that particular machine, so you just can't keep rebooting it, taking it down. So understanding, your test environment, and do you have one that's adequate, or maybe we need to, think about having another one as well, more of a true test environment, not a dev. Challenge 4, do I have the tools to test properly? So when you're migrating to a new OS, right? I mean, you want to know, what's my performance key factors? Is it I/O? Is it CPU? People know where their holes are in the production environments. So, do I have the tools to test properly? Got Claire sitting in the room over here, who's been helping me out with a lovely test program that's going to be part of the OS for I/O testing, which is very important. And I've been using this now more often than not. So having the tools to test properly, and sometimes we have these and we can let you know where they are, but as part of the test, right? I mean, it's easy to set up a small environment and say, oh, I code ported this performance-wise. I start to run stuff and all of a sudden it goes, right? So, where are the holes there? So having the right things to test. Brett, who's giving another presentation right now, has been working with T4 for x86. We've got the COMP type of stuff working. Still some issues with the fiber channel piece of it. Needs to sit down and tend to that a little bit. But again, having the tools to test properly in your new environment. If you're not sure what they are, don't be afraid to ask us, or what do we use to. And challenge 5, am I aware of any issues that could impact my goals? Right. So what could that be? Usually some piece of old software. You may have to write your way out. Customers sometimes have some of these older products that aren't moving, but when you rip the covers off of, it's been, well, I've been running this because that's what we're running, but it turns out you're using about this much of a particular product. And, a couple of pieces of C code, you could write your way right out of it. So these are some of the challenges, right? So I like that. These are flags on the left. I thought when I first looked at these, I thought they were like the boots from Holland, in the encyclopedias when I was a kid. I said, oh, those really cool graphics, right? Put these in, and then I realized, oh yeah, they're flags. But that was my kind of excitement. So we have this is the VSI Professional Services group, which Raphael is in charge of, which I work for, and this is the time that we put in our shameless plug. That we have these services available for you should you start going through these challenges and realize that you need some help. We have application services through Brett and his team that can help write you out of some of the stuff that you're in. We have configuration services, to help get your environment stabilized and ready for x86, and design, implementation, and cloud. So we have many offerings in professional services in BSI to help you achieve your goals. Now, we have customers that will call up and say, hey, I need to get from here to there. Please, just take over and do it. We have other customers that we do a lot of T&M where we'll consult our way through with a customer too. So there's many options for different budgets, and that's true with anything. I mean, sometimes some of these folks managing these systems are Linux managers. You don't have the technical expertise that a 20-year VMS veteran has. So, but a lot of these folks are very intelligent. So there's a lot they can do, and we basically, I'll put Jackie on the spot here. Jackie is the sales account management.
Senior account manager, yeah.
Manager of account managers, right? So all starts with a call to her team. And we'd like to engage with your account folks. And if you need us, they'll be happy to take care of you, whip you up a nice quick statement of work, and get us engaged in moving forward in whatever that is. So I figured I'd start by talking about upgrades and why upgrades. Well, they don't go away. Whether you're upgrading in Itanium or you're upgrading in x86, you get good at that because the x86 upgrades are coming fast and furious. So for a lot of folks that haven't done upgrades in a while, I found a lot of the same principles apply because the greatest thing is VMS is VMS. So put this little chart together. You know, it's kind of like upgrade success, right? Products, right? I mean, if you really look at this, again, I hate to oversimplify it, but I run into a lot of customers that just didn't take the time to go through the environments properly. But products, do I have an update? You know, should I update? You know, do I have enough backups? Do I have enough disks? You know, disks are very important in upgrades. I'll get to that in a minute. Patches, right? You know, here's the various patches, right? Patches can be important too, because if you patch certain to certain levels now in VMS, especially in integrity, you're going to find that certain patches are going to want you to install, like maybe updated LDAP or maybe an update to SSL. There might be some things that you need to put on when you're upgrading or updating, you know, a patch to a product that's going to require you to put other things on it. So that might make you start thinking, do I really need this patch? So when you do the upgrades, I mean, we have, if you go out to the site, I don't know, there's 23, 24, you know, patches in integrity right now, right? I haven't looked at x86 lately, but, you know, do I need all 24? When I go to the update, well, there's 24, do I need them all? What I'm saying is, if you take the time to go through them, you might find that, you know, I only need, because I'm only running this much, I might only need these patches, rather to blindly install a lot of these patches that may require you to update other things that you weren't thinking about, you know, that could affect the running of your machine. So those are the things that are important. Spare disks, very important during upgrades, and I'll get to that. Backups, even though we keep talking about them, sometimes this can really shake up upgrade times if you don't have the right disk available backups. A lot of folks like to upgrade to a test system, or they have test systems that they want to do it. Again, backups and disks and disk compression speed. This is a really big one. Now, and if you haven't upgraded a Itanium in a while, and the only reason why I bring this up with Itaniums is because there's a lot of push to get to 842L3 because of the cost. There's a tax or a fee.
EES.
EE.
Extended engineering.
Right. Extended engineering support if you stay on a level that's below 842L3. So a lot of folks that haven't upgraded in a while are going to be upgrading, and they haven't done these upgrades. So I'll get into further down why a disk compression is absolutely necessary in the Itanium world. Probably will be necessary in x86 down the road, but I'll also explain why probably not here, right? I could spend ages on some of these slides, but a lot of this would be information that you would want to have, you know, just knowing your upgrade, right? So again, as I said, knowing when or to install a patch, you know, very important. You may not need them all, or going to a certain level of like runtime library may require you to go to a different level of some other patch in between. So kind of going through them all and understanding them all, that's why test systems are important. It can be very helpful. Many times layered products can be handled separately from the upgrade. And anytime they can, I always say yes. There's a lot going on in an upgrade. But then again, downtime is hard to get at times too. But certain layered products can withstand the upgrade, and then may require a lot of work to get the products upgraded on top of it. For instance, you know, C-switch to Apache. So if you're running old C-switch and you want to get to 842L3, you're probably going to have to upgrade to our new Apache. Well, there's a lot of stuff in that upgrade alone that requires configuration, saving, and file manipulation and things like that. Upgrades to OpenJDK might require you, I mean, we had some customers just recently run into this where they,
Wow.
where's my bean?
Wow.
It's only OpenJDK. It wasn't anything really huge. Yeah. We'll get the sound or something. That'd be different.
Maybe that's the construction outside blasting.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Construction point.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, no, but you know, so you may need to do OpenJDK, and that may require you to recompile some of your Java programs to match the new version of JDK. Upgrades to newer versions of Samba, if you're a Samba user, right? So, you know, depending on the version that you're running, a lot of folks, when I dig into their machines, I find out that they're running really old or sometimes HPE versions of software on their integrity boxes, and they're going to need to upgrade to get to 2L3. So you need to check into some of these products because they may require new versions and may not survive the upgrades too. So again, that's why, if you have any questions on these down the road, you can reach out and talk to us. As I said, research, these product sets require updates, it could lead to significant programming changes or configuration changes to accommodate the new versions, like Samba or like C-Swiss. Is your test environment really that? Is it really a test environment? Because we do run into that where we'll want to upgrade a customer's test environment because that's what they want to do, but it's also their development environment, and they go, well, we only have an hour. We've got to do this. Yeah, no. So again, when you get ready to start thinking about an upgrade and doing it in a test environment, know the limits for that. Do I have enough disks to store the necessary backups? And you should do a pre-upgrade backup, then a post-upgrade backup, pre-patch, right, and then a final. So when we're doing the backups, there's different the upgrades. We do an upgrade, whether it's x86 or titanium or whatever, right? You start with your backup that you're going to want to recover from, and that we want to be able to get at, right? So I want something I can get at or boot off of, or at least get near to boot, right? I need one before I do the upgrade. I need another one after the upgrade. And then if you've got a litany of patches on after the patches are done, because you could have a problem, along the way that something happens during the patching process, you only have to recover back to the upgrade process. So this is why we generally do 3 sets of backups when we're doing any kind of upgrade. Am I prepared to do disk defragmentation of the system just prior to the upgrade? This is probably the biggest cause of failures in Itanium upgrades that I need. The upgrade itself and the patches, especially the syskits and stuff, require quite a bit of contiguous space in the system. And if you have an Itanium disk that hasn't been upgraded or anything done to it in quite some time, it may be too fragmented to allow the upgrade to proceed. You could get a failure during the upgrade, or you could get a failure during the patch section of the upgrade, which would derail your whole process at that. So we are always saying that you always want to start with a fresh system disk. Now, as I was saying with the with the x86 version, the reason why we haven't really run into that much, they're new disks. Not a lot of stuff, right? You're not old baggage. It hasn't been hanging around a while. There hasn't been a lot of people that are putting these disks together and making them true system disks. In the past, the system disk kind of had, we'll put some of this stuff there. We'll put, they're kind of sprinkled with other stuff other than just system disks. So now that we're going to new versions, everybody's got a neat, tidy, and I haven't seen it happen yet in the x86 world, but that's not to say down the road, if things get fragmented. We have a product called DFO, and DFO is a great tool for even looking at disk fragmentation, which can help, possibly derail your upgrade. And you can install that and use all the show commands for free, unlicensed. I actually had a customer last year that, yes, sir. Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry. We had a customer last year that we actually hit that wall where I had upgraded them a year before, and I had to upgrade them again. And I'm like, okay, I didn't do the compression. Just last year, right? I'm doing the patch sequence upgrades, and sure enough, I hit the no contiguous space, right? I should have done this. I should have known better, but I just did it because I just did this. How could this disk be that fragmented? It was all the free space was fragmented on the system. And if I had just installed that, taken a quick peek at it, I wouldn't know. So fragmentation, very, very important when you're doing it. So for those, trying to get your Itaniums upgraded to 2L3, you have to be able to do a disk compression before you start, or you're probably going to run into one of these issues that's going to derail you.
What sort of a ballpark figure contiguous disk space are we talking about? How many gigabytes worth?
Well, I guess my feeling is it's either is or it isn't, right? So it is just so much easier to do an image backup back and forth before you start your upgrade. And I think I get into this a little bit, right? So, so like the meat and potatoes of an upgrade, right? You need disk space to accommodate multiple backups. So these are little things that people are like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. I need to be able to back up my system. And if your system disk wasn't a true system disk, which I'm starting to run into a lot of customers, I found one that they're a RAID system. They rated it. The system disk is huge. So now I need like this monster space to go plunk an image down to the system disk. They didn't have enough space in their platform to do the to even do a backup of that disk. What type of disk, right? You have fiber, local, cache, without cache. A lot of the integrity when you're upgrading those, they have a P410i controller. Generally, a lot of them have cache, but some don't. So don't, your disk could be running really slow, right? Upgrades isn't always, this is in red because it's my opinion that I've run with for years. Upgrades need to start with freshly compacted disk. So you'll need to have a disk compression before the upgrade. Very important. If you do that, you will alleviate so many problems, and your stuff will start to run really, really well. I'll get into a couple other things down the road on what you could do to your system disk while they're down. But test the time the backup disk compressions take. Do a test ahead of time. What we're finding out, some of these systems that have really large system disks that are really packed up, it's taking hours to back up because what they're doing is they're backing up a lot of times from a fiber disk. The spare disk they have is local, uncached. It's taking hours to back up the system disk. So those that have fiber and can just shove fiber disks into a machine, it's wonderful, right? Zip, 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 everything done. But when you're trying to do this with JBODs and these old D3000 cabinets, with just regular old rusty spinny disks going on, and your system disk is really big, sometimes it can take a long time to do an upgrade. So when you think about a disk compression, you have to go this way, and you have to go that way before you can start. So if it's going to take 2 hours out, it's probably going to go back a little bit quicker because it will be compressing. But, again, this adds a lot of time to the upgrade. So it seems really simple, but test the time that these backups are really going to take. Again, we ran into this with a customer, and I was trying everything in the book, and it's like to the point where we put a USB hanging off of the back of the titanium to try to get the image backup done, and took about 22 hours. So they're actually in the process now of getting disk space, right? And this is what I have down the bottom. What if you don't have enough spare disks? You need to get them, borrow them, lease them. You need to have disks, spare disks to do a proper upgrade. So not having enough space to do this compression and house your backups can affect recovery should something happen. So if you don't do those steps, you could wind up with an unbootable disk that could take you hours to recover. So this customer is actually in the process of leasing an array to get the upgrade done to 203 because they physically don't have enough space or and no other mechanism. Even tape backup took 2 hours and 50 minutes to back up the system. So that's 6 hours. And in a production environment, you can't have 6 hours just doing the backup. We haven't even done an upgrade yet. And this is what I was talking about. Prime example, customer had two. When I looked at their disk, they had DK0, DK1. I said, oh, this will be a breeze. Until I saw they were RAIDs, and then each had 3, and there was only one JBOD spare. They had no room. So, again, no way we could do this. The timing was just so crazy. It's unfeasible. So, as I said, they're renting a disk array. Shadowing is a friend here. However, while a shadow can work as a pre-upgrade backup, it doesn't compress anything, right? It's a mirror. So, shadows were always great in the past because you could pop shadow set out, do your upgrade on the, on that disk, and then bring it back in and then reshadow.
Just reshadow it the right way, right direction.
Correct. Right. And if you've dismounted it, usually Shadow knows that if you have to dismount slash, or mount over ID or whatever /shad, right? Over ID Shadow, blows the shadow control block away. So at least that, but yes, you want to make sure that you do know which way you're going. That you're bound, making sure that disk you want is up before you add your shadow back in. Know your applications, right? Are they VSI and third party? Not only would you need to check with VSI for upgrade type of issues, and again, this is where you find out the skeletons in the closet. Third party vendors to ensure their product will survive an upgrade. This is where we're starting to find vendors that don't exist, and the customers like, we've been running this Microsoft something or other, Goldfax, and oh yeah, we really still. Well, who supports that? Nobody anymore. And I'm like, okay, this is stuff you need to start thinking about. I've got products that there's really no support, but so that's when you actually do your test upgrade to see if they're going to actually function. And remember, this is not the responsibility of VSI to make sure you loop in your application vendors and get their side. We would like to do everything for everybody, but you should have working relationships with your product vendors just like you have with us. So make sure you loop them in and consider having them on standby as well. Because when we do the upgrades, we're there, and then we usually provide standby services after the upgrade. So the people that worked on your upgrade are available, to help you should something pop up that we didn't anticipate. Same thing should happen if you have a product that really runs your business, right? With the OS, but if you've got a product that runs your business and that's also being upgraded, you should also make sure that those folks are on standby. Now let's see, Sysgen, specifically AutoGen. Whether we like it or not, AutoGen is going to run after an upgrade is completed. And this is like one of my pet peeves. If anybody's gone through an upgrade with me, you get this most gorgeous modparams.net, suitable for framing. Just a nut on how to lay those out. And when I look at customers before the upgrade, it is a hodgepodge of stuff overwritten, rewritten, done, upgrade after upgrade after upgrade. So we tend to clean those out, but whether we like it or not, it's going to run. So you do need to make sure, because again, if you haven't upgraded anything in a while, again, I'll get to the x86 on a few other slides, but for the folks trying to get to 2L3 to avoid the cost increase and trying to do upgrades on your own, the Sysgen piece of it is very important. Because if you have not run AutoGen, or you had somebody that was helping you out with your systems, and they made those changes, they bumped up on-page 9, or they bumped up, something. They didn't put it in mod params. As soon as modparams.dat runs, it's going to reset those values right back to the default. And then your application's going to fire up and go. And you're like, I don't know how that happened. So, saving these things is very important. So we suggest doing a show all and a show special in Sysgen prior to. And I actually do that on like every upgrade, even if I'm upgrading integrity, whatever. I just want to have those Sysgen parameters tucked aside, just in case something acts really weird. So I know that nothing changed. AutoGen didn't change something I wasn't expecting it to change. So AutoGen gets a bad rap because of this, because it doesn't people don't run it a lot. It could be a great tool actually for performance if you run it frequently up to the test phase, but that's another slideshow. If your disk is mounted privately, right? So during the upgrade, it's one of the very few times you have this system disk that's, you're booted off of the platter, or another thing I like to do too, and the reason why I say more disks, I like to put the upgrade media on a disk and not have it on, not booting off of the CD. I just image the CD over to a disk and then boot off of that disk. Boom, up in like 2 minutes, upgrade starts, everything works much faster. So if you do have the ability to use disks, great thing to do, put your OS medium on disk, makes it much faster. But it's one of the few times when you can actually mount your system disk privately to do so. So if you never set your system disk for DVE, dynamic volume expansion, great time to do a set volume /limit and let it run out. In case down the road, if you're on an array and you want to expand the disk, DVE is fabulous, right? You just bump it up on the array, set volume size of VMS, away we go. Especially those that use system disk for things that they probably shouldn't. Setfilenomove.com should be run. And that's in the event you want to run DFO in the future on the system disk. So this file has to be run for you to run DFO to defrag your system disk using our DFO, using our DFO. Great time to do that. I have the system disk mounted privacy. And then if you compress your system disk, right, and now we've got the system disk back and I'm ready to, go do the upgrade or whatever, you also need to refix your boot points. You need to run boot options because when you image your disk from one way back to the other way, you've now null and voided all your boot paths in boot options. They will look a mess. So boot options, use the validate option. It'll revalidate them and save you the trouble of having to boot. If you don't do this step, what will wind up happening is you go to boot and it'll say like no file found. You get some error during the boot, and it'll start walking down the boot list. And maybe and that's the other thing. If you haven't peeked at your boot options in a while, it might be a good idea to clean out some of those old entries that you may have had in there from test time or whatever, because it'll keep going down the list till it finds something or doesn't. Then you'd have to wait till it gets back to sysboot and go in and do a conversational boot. Which means you'll have to first get to an FS and then go in there and get down into the directories to find the VMS show command, device command, and then you can determine what FS your disk is, the disk number and what FS it is. It's kind of it's a little bit of extra work. So if when your compression is done, if you run in and do the boot options and clean up those links, that works out much better. So migrations, right? So migrations. Has anybody have been in migration world before from alpha to integrity? The facts to alpha?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for those of us that didn't think there was going to be another migration, thanks to Johan, Daria, and Camille, and Claire, and all the good people that fought the good fight, here we are, right? So now we have another migration, right? So, these can be really interesting things to do. So, review of your current product set against the availability of products in the target OS. Seems simple, but these are the times when you're going to start figuring that out. What don't I have, but I really need to get here? So, do I need to write myself out of something? Is there another? And again, while Daria's here, the important thing to remember here is, and she said this in her opening statement this morning, is when you call up and ask about something and 2 months go by, don't think that answer no was no forever. Because 2 months from now,
To that review, I would add, what did I have in my product that I no longer need to have in it?
Right.
Because VMS is now providing that.
Right. I see what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for instance, like we're providing the network stack, right? Which we didn't used to. We used to have license UCX, right? Don't need to do that. But the thing about the availability of the products is that we're constantly doing stuff. And I actually got a call from a customer the other day who was still upset that we didn't have clusters in x86. Because when they asked 2.5 years ago, they said, no, that's not available. And what somebody should have said, it's not available yet, right? So I said, oh yeah, we got clusters. Oh, that's great. And we got this, we got that. Now, oh yeah, we got KVM. So all of a sudden, I hand them the information out of the install guide, the release notes, and they're like, oh, you've come a long way. So what I'm saying is, it's just because we don't have it now, constantly check back, especially if it's one of those deal breaker items for you. And if it is, make sure you let your account team know that, hey, listen, I want to upgrade, I'm stuck on this, right? If there's anything that we can do to help, whether it's, and actually Brett's doing one right now, he's writing somebody out of something that was a deal breaker. And it turns out it's a lot less time than he even thought to write him out of it. Very important, right? We want you to move, and don't think that just because you have X that it's an end game. Check with us, see what we can do for you.
And Dave, maybe it's a good time to plug that this homework, we can do actually a lot for the customer because the account managers have access to tools that do that.
Right, where they send them the
VSI for
right,
exactly.
yeah.
So you don't need to do this homework all by yourself in your corner. No, we can actually help with all of it.
That is true. So absolutely correct. So for those thinking of doing that, absolutely. Contact your account manager. You can. They'll give you a small program to run. It comes back to us, and then we can do two things. Obviously, with that, we can sanitize it against x86 products and availability, and see where your challenges are. And could be all that very quickly. How fast we can do it, and also gives us the information to dig down on some of the older products that you may have. Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Again, this is stuff that's coming so fast, I haven't been right? So a sound plan on how to migrate data across architectures, something we haven't had to do since the alpha integrity. Shadowing can be your friend, right? I mean, if you cluster in something and you shadow and you're able to shadow. The thing that winds up happening a lot of times is people, just think shadow and they're like, oh, great, I'm going to shadow. Well, not to the cloud server from here. You're not going to be able to do, right? But I mean, there could be instances where you could tease shadow a little bit, right? You could do image backups and populate some disks on the other side, and then kind of bring shadowing in, so it doesn't have to do as much, right? But anyway, if you're in a situation where everything's locally, and or even if you can share the same storage arrays, which you should be able to, shadowing can be your friend. And if shadowing isn't something that you have already, and you want to use shadowing as part of your migration, well, give us a call, let us know. I mean, we obviously have licenses. We could certainly loan you that for the migration, and if you like shadowing so much, I would say 9 out of 10 people that I've loaned shadowing license to never gave them up afterwards. That's again, we can make some of this stuff happen. Even temporary cluster licenses, for instance. So if you needed to cluster your x86 in with a Itanium, move stuff around, get everything ready, because you've got to get this data somewhere. So the easiest way, a lot of times, to move it is get it in a cluster. So again, if it's a short plan, we could certainly entertain that.
So you can cluster in the x86 versions with the Itanium versions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a huge mix and match as you wish. So it could be Alpha, Itanium, x86, x86 premise, x86 cloud.
Well, it's mostly just because we're going to be migrating to it. We have to,
Yeah.
right? Because our X2800s go out of support. So that's not good for the customer. But we've already done, because originally the application that we're talking about porting, we ported off of Digital Unix for OD from 99. And we did that in 2014. So I know how to migrate, but we have to migrate the external links. But I was like, it would be really easy if I could run my dual instances, one on x86 and one on Itanium.
To be true with you, what you speak of, I may have a little further down, but what you speak of is kind of like what I would call, an ultimate migration. When you put them all in the same cluster, and then eventually, because customers have many programs that they run. So you can concentrate on one product set at a time in your environment. And then all of a sudden you reach the point where this integrity is sitting over there, and it's like, have we got so it's, you could, the nice thing is you can do it phased, especially if you have done everything in development. You say, okay, this is going to work, and you turn it on in x86 and somebody forgot something or didn't read, whatever. And you've got your Itanium sitting there in the cluster. You can turn the program back on, then go back, retest, whatever. So absolutely. MSCP serving is the method of mounting across disks, usually at that point. So you can get at all the same data if you're not in the same SAN profile or whatever. So like if you're, if you don't have the same SAN connections and you cluster in, you can mount the disk use an MSCP server to get at the data and your testing plan is needed to ensure I/O speeds are adequate and new versions of products and languages achieve the same results. No. So as we've been doing this, right, I/O speeds are very, very important, and I'm going to get to that with my apples to apples, right? So I'm running into a lot where customers have, wonderful SANs, Titanium is running great products, big I/O hogs, working great, and then they go to x86 and they're like, high performance is out the window. No, it really isn't. You're running a disk given to you by a hypervisor that VMS pretty much looks at as the JMOD, and you lost all your fiber speed. Sometimes, as I'm starting to find out through the IOF tool that Claire Grant has a presentation on some of this stuff, so I would probably attend that if you're interested. I will be. So if you have direct access fiber channel, you should probably be considering having direct access fiber channel in your x86 charter. Because we have that available. If you called me 8 months ago or 10 months ago or whatever and said, geez, can I have direct access fiber channel x86? I say, no. But not only do we have it now on VMware, we also have it on KVM. Paul Jacoby is giving a presentation on direct access fiber channel on KVM in this as well. So there's some great stuff going on. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of these folks and understanding how this is going to come into the migration of your platform. So you really need to think of the mindset that, if I had this environment here, I really need it there. And if not, you really need to, my few slides back, you've got to test. You've got to test the I/O. Somebody gives you a vDisk, right? You give you this, and this, and all of a sudden you start running stuff, and it is running just, man, this is unbelievable. This Titanium, this x86, this is terrible. It's really not. She just gave it a terrible disk to do I/O, and no fault of your own. It's just that's the way it came. So this is why I am very peaked on this, making sure that, if what you have, your environment should be relatively similar. I know there's kind of a bit of a jam with this, right? So you lose some things when you start talking about this I/O, direct I/O access, right? PCI pass-through. You lose vMotion, which a lot of people like. You do lose a few things. The other thing too is you have to dedicate those fiber channel cards directly to the host. So from the hypervisor. So you need to stack up a few of these if you're going to have more than one VM, running VMS. In the big box, you're going to have to stack up a few cards depending on how many you need. But again, Paul's got a great presentation of this too. So again, apples to apples, right? Well, OpenVMS is agnostic to storage for hypervisors. Speeds may vary, especially if the storage is using acceleration drivers only available on Linux or other things. So again, I had a customer, we would running speed tests on the Linux box for the storage array, and they were wonderful. The speed was on a VM, everything was great. And then by the time I got it presented to VMS, it was terrible. And I'm like, why is this? So it turned out that they were running a vSAN, and the vSAN had some special software that was running to get it accelerated, and that was available on Linux. But VMS didn't know about it, even though we should be able, we should be agnostic and we don't care. When we got that disk as a HVMK file, here we go. When we got that, we didn't know how to make it. We didn't know how that. It just becomes a JBOD to us. It was really terrible speed. So this is why I'm saying, you want to make sure you check your I/O. And it's not the fault of VSI x86 version. It's the fault of not having apples to apples as far as storage. Presently, no common system disk is available. It is on the list now. I received that word from this lovely gentleman over here, and it is at least on the list, right? So I know, it seems it works. Beautiful, because there are a lot of customers that like their common system disk, and that's presently not available, but is now on the list. So for those thinking of that, that's great news. And then, well, we're kind of 2/3 of the way there, right? I kind of feel that way. We have PCI pass-through, so I have direct access storage, right? And I've got direct access to my storage, and I can have a dump-off system disk, which is the way it have to work anyway. So I'm 2/3, huh, bro? We're getting there. Super. Consider your distances carefully, especially when you.
I can add just a little bit there.
I know you can.
Access to the disk is not the issue. It's the error log file that we've got to solve. So
Okay.
we have a problem to solve. It has nothing to do with access
For the common.
for the cluster common systems.
Okay. Good. So again, consider your distances carefully if you're using shadowing, because distance and latency can make that not work the way you would like. Can't just shadow stuff halfway around the world and have it get back to the shadow driver quickly. Shared distance systems, yeah. Shared not. Yes, in a cluster. Well, in a cluster, yes. Yeah, the cluster fence works. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like right now, you would bring up your x86 with its own system disk. But if you can either MSCP serve in your other disks, or if you're going to use PCI pass-through, you can direct connect storage to them just like the other ones. Mount them up, shadow fence. I mean, the cluster fence will take care of blocking manager. All right. Consider a mixed architecture cluster. Oh. There would be many caveats to setting this up. Talk to your account managers if you need temporary licensing to do this. So whatever way you'd like to get there, we want to help you do. Okay, that's the advantage of us being licensed holders. We can do stuff. So time to start packing. What do I need to consider to start moving, and what can I do ahead of time? That's what we've been talking about, right? What do you do ahead of time? Again, testing, I/O speeds, this sort of thing, making sure that your VM is basically adequate to your present, RX 2800, BL 860, whatever you have, right? And to be truthful with you, at least from my eyesight, I haven't comparable CPU to CPU has been working fairly well. I haven't seen anybody complaining about CPU. I only see people complaining about I/O. And it's simply because they're not apples to apples. If possible, so these are things to consider before you pack them. Move all cluster common files that you'd like into a disk other than the system disk if it hasn't already. I kind of like that in a cluster because I still used to do that. I remember from Alpha to Itanium, we would move, pick a common disk for those files. And even if I'm bringing my x86 blocks in, and my stuff isn't there, I'm going to change my logicals to point to the disk I'm going to mount for the integrity or whatever. Who's ever handling the disk, right? I'm going to make sure that it just saves a lot of issues down the road with pretty much anything from upgrades on down. So if you haven't done it already, this would allow multiple systems and architectures to access these files independent of mounting system disks across the cluster. It can be handy during upgrades as these common files are separate from the upgrading disk, including as long as you include it in your early mounts, side logicals or something. Because VMS regardless, right? The use of these common files to house things like UAF and rights lists can be very beneficial. Allow either architecture to access the same stuff within the cluster. So I like that approach myself. Most common files, here's a list of most things that we wind up putting on a common system disk, and even then, that's probably a longer list than most people would have. Most people probably have the Q file, the rights list, SysUAF, and that's probably about it. But and I think with the net proxy one, even though I had it in there, I think I did some tests that it still used the one that was local anyway. But I had that in for some reason. The reason why there's two that look alike, one's different, the other is different. Some of these files are open and cannot be copied when if you're creating this disk. They can't be copied, so you have to use backup ignore equals interlock. You could do convert/share or something too, right? I have found that backup ignore equals interlock is more reliable. Anyway, don't forget make sure if you're doing that, owner equals original when you return it, and validate the security of the file. Because sometimes if you back these up and you put it back, in my lookalike system account with different UAF or whatever, different UIC identifier. Yeah, all of a sudden somebody go to log in. I can't. Nobody can log in. I don't know why. Yeah. Whoops. Let me fix it. The nice part about a migration is you're usually moving to a new system disk, and it's a rare time to do house cleaning. I've talked about this before. This is why having a good plan to move or not, get your disk defragmented, smooth transitions, right? Great time to do housekeeping. Only take what you need. If you want to bring your x86 into your existing cluster, having UAF queues and stuff in a prominent location, I feel is really. Suggestion initially would bring your x86 node in as a non-voting member. There's no sense having it vote. It's going to probably be up and down more than anything else. So I don't want it playing in my cluster. So I'd bring them in initially as non-voting members. This will allow the node to come up, without impacting a lot of stuff in the cluster. I don't have to worry about changing my quorum and expected votes and all that stuff. And generally adding new nodes, we're probably going to need patching, reboots, stuff like that. MSCP serving will be the most common method people will use to get your disks talking to each other in mixed architecture, the x86, unless fiber channel pass-through is available for your x86 system. Then you simply have direct access fiber channel. There's as you said, the cluster lock manager will handle all that for you, so you won't step on any files, but do make sure you're clustered when you mount this. Some folks cluster in, cluster out, and then all of a sudden, if you've got this machine and it has the access to the disk, and you change some things, you want to bring it up standalone. I don't know where the temptation for that comes, but I see it occasionally. When you bring that up standalone and you go to mount those disks, the second you start tinkering with those, you will have double deallocation and start corrupting your disk. So on a disks that are mounted to a cluster, the node needs to be in the cluster. Don't ever take it down and say, I'm going to bring this up standalone because I just want to try this. No, not on those disks that are part of your cluster. You will double deallocate those files and they will be a disaster. And you could theoretically start corrupting your entire disk file. So once a cluster member, always a cluster member with your model. At present, common system disks, I said, not available on x86. They will be down the road. You heard it here today, hot off the press. Common parameter adjustments for adding nodes to the cluster, right? This, sometimes people haven't had to add a node to a cluster in a while, but you could certainly use any of the cluster config deals. I just go in and change. Unique Gala class system ID, your serve all, depending on what you want to serve or not serve, your load, do things. If you're going to use IPCI, cluster config LAN does a good job at that, or you could just, move those around. But here, if you're considering adding a cluster member via IPCI, which means this is a distance cluster member, right? And you need to use this. Remember, all the nodes in your cluster also have to have IPCI on them. Because I get people to call up, I put IPCI on this, and I can't get it to join the cluster. Well, no, you can't, because the cluster needs one common interconnect for every node it's talking. Every node, there's one, they all have to have one in common. All the cluster members have to have one interconnect in common to talk to each other. So even though, like, I may have a cluster with 2 nodes or 3 nodes, and 2 of them are on the same LAN, they're going to use LAN to talk about. They won't even probably touch IPCI. But if I got the third guy that's distance away, he's going to need IPCI. Well, that means the other 2 do too. So if you're going to use IPCI, do not forget that you need it on all the nodes. So you need to install it and set it up on all the nodes. Otherwise, you will not have a cluster common connection denominator. So we whisked through that, but thank you. I know there's a lot there, and obviously you have the slides, but it's good time for a Q&A. We've got a few minutes here. And
That last thing implied that IPCI is available on x86.
yes.
Everything I do is in clusters over IPCI. Absolutely everything. And I, in fact, disabled the local LAN just to make sure it all works.
That's very true, and you can do that because we were having some IPCIs with a customer, and I did wind up having there was two nodes always talk to each other, and I knew they were using the local LAN. So yeah, I mean, I just went into SCACP and did a stop node stop something along. Anyway, it's really easy to shut them off and see if they still stay up. Like, whoops. So because if IPCI wasn't set up right. And that's what cluster configure LAN does a good job with that, because it creates those two files, the PE IP.dat1 and the cluster.dat. One of them is the one that tells all the other addresses in the cluster, and the other one has all the, because when you do cluster config LAN, it's going to ask you for the addresses of the other members in the cluster. So it creates a file with that. The other one is going to do like a default route deal. It's going to set up a route from your network device on out to the, because I looked at the file, there's like one string, and I think it's basically setting it.
When it comes to the addresses, I just have a file that has every node and every address in it. I just copy it on an
Correct.
system.
Right, you can copy that file around, right?
But do it all the time.
Right, yeah, but you have to make sure that the files are updated, because when you put a new member in, now the old one's stale, right? So, right, but when you have, you're right, he has the new one, you can just copy that out to all the other ones in your file.
Yeah,
The other file, one of the
that,
files, go ahead.
I do say that only works with the VSI TCP. You cannot do that with multi.
Possible.
Yeah.
I think there's one other quick thing I didn't discuss, but I mean, a lot of people know it, but cluster authorized shutdown. That file, because I don't know how many people don't know their cluster. Well, everybody can find out their cluster group number, cluster password, if you don't know it. When you go to configure IPCI, it is going to ask you your cluster group and your cluster password. If you do not have that password, the only other way we get this, you can write it, whatever, you can move the file, cluster authorized.dat, like we used to back and forth. But there's like one other function when you move it over in x86, you have to run that sys$md, and it somehow populates it into the smaller stuff.
You can
Comprehension.
just convert the symlink to a VMS.
To a VMS file and mount the MD disk or whatever. But anyway, there's some ways to shoehorn that in, but could be a good time if you do not know your cluster authorization ID and password, and you have a cluster reboot coming up at some point. Might be a good time to reset those across your cluster and write them down in the, because the other guy that wrote them down probably left a decade ago. But I run into it a lot. So, but anyway, that's. I thank you again for taking time out of your day and starting a whole boot camp with me. Woo!